Hello, winter has arrived in the UK, so I thought it was high time to add some proper working side seam pockets to my favorite winter coat. You can use the same method to add a side seam pocket to any skirt, dress, or coat. And the great thing is, if you're like me and you hate small floppy pockets even more than no pockets, then this tutorial is for you. I'm going to show you how to draft the right pocket for your hands and also how to improve how it actually sits on your garment, so you end up with a nice, roomy, sturdy, stable pocket where you can put your keys, your wallets and your phone in. So this isn't the quickest tutorials. You can find lots which show you how to do a basic side seam pocket in a few minutes. This is longer and in depth because I show you all the steps to get exactly the pocket you need for your needs. If you haven't met, I'm Charlotte. I'm a fashion designer, pattern cutter and teacher, and I love helping people learning how to design, draft and make their own clothes. If you want to learn how to do that, have a look in the description to see how you can do that. But now let's have a look on how to add proper pockets to our existing clothes. I've taken a step back so you can see the full coat I'm working on, and also of course you need to know where my pockets are. So this coat already has pockets, but they let down this coat. You can see they're quite small. They've also got holes, so it's time to replace them with really big pockets which don't flop around and move around if I actually put stuff in. At the moment they're fine for my hands, but as soon as anything goes in, they sort of drag it down a bit. If you haven't got any pockets and you want to add pockets, you can use the same method. All you have to do to start with is sort of position your hands where you normally have your pockets. For me, it's always roughly where the hip bone pokes out. And that's sort of the area I want my hand to comfortably rest, but that might be a little bit different for you. And then you can literally put your hand in the position. You could even sort of feel underneath on your trousers or something, there is your pocket, and then mark the top and the bottom. You need to ensure that it's sort of, maybe 3 centimeters or an inch extra space, because there's nothing worse than a tight pocket where you can't get your hand in. And you need that position, and then you can unpick your garment. I'm going to show you a method which works best for straight seams because that's easiest. If you're working into a curved seam or something, you just need to trace out the curve beforehand. But once you've done the position of your pocket and unpicked it, or in my case I need to unpick the old pocket, then we can draft a new working pocket bag. And I'm also going to talk you through how you can make it sit better. The next thing you need to do is measure your opening. At the same time, if you're replacing a pocket, you can also unpick it, or of course if you're adding a pocket, you need to unpick the side seam where you want to insert that pocket. Then you need to decide what sort of pocket you want. So you could just go for the basic pocket like this, but the problem is when you put stuff in it, it can sort of flip-flap around when you're walking. And the other thing as well, if you put heavy stuff in, it actually, because it is only attached to the opening, it starts distorting. And sometimes if it's a thinner fabric, it can actually distort the hang of your whole coat. So a basic pocket like that works for when you don't want to put much in. So it's great for tissues and your hand. However, if you want to improve the fit, there's a few options. One option is to actually extend your pocket bag to the side seam all the way, so you end up more with a sort of flat side here, because then it's attached a little bit longer to the side seam, but it is still not that stable. So here are 2 options to really improving the fit and hang of your pocket. The first one works really well for styles with a waist, and I'm showing you this on a miniature Claire McCardle dress. If you have a fitted waist, you can actually anchor your pockets, and I'm going to show you how it works. You can see this is my side seam pocket. I first of all extended it all the way to the side seam, so a little bit more stable that way. You can see this is my opening, but then can you see it goes all the way up to my waist seam, so it's a really long pocket. And this is all, this space up there isn't used as a pocket, but what it means is that the pocket is not just secured vertically, but it is also secured horizontally into your waist seam up here, which means if you put anything in, it's sort of held up by your waist seam being tight around your body. So these are really usable pockets and are great if you have a waist seam. If you have a gathered skirt like that, you can literally just draft a square pocket. If you have a curved side seam, you will need your actual pattern piece to use as a pocket like that, or trace through your skirt pattern. That's the only drawback with this. If you have a style like this is a shirt dress I have, and it hasn't got a waist seam, but you still want a really stable pocket, what you can do, you can see I've got a side seam pocket here, and then what I've done, I've top stitched the pocket on. So that's a really nice feature to use for linen styles or for workwear inspired styles or casual styles like this. And then top stitching does the same sort of thing as anchoring it, because it's sort of just held to the whole front, so the whole garment is holding the pocket rather the side seam. So these are the three options you can do, improve the usability of your pockets. Now you know them, let's draft our pocket. You need a piece of paper big enough for your pocket plus a bit extra. If you want to anchor it in the waist, of course you need enough space above as well to go all the way up. If you're using it on just a straight side seam, you can just use any piece of paper. If of course you're having something with a curved side seam, you need to either trace through the existing garment, just the angle, so you can just trace around the angle, or use a sewing pattern if you made it yourself. Then all we need to do is draw on our side seam, and mark our opening with enough space above to add a seam allowance. Always check your measurement is big enough, so you can see I've got lots of space above and below. When you have to decide on the depth of your pocket, I like to make mine deep enough that my phone can easily fit in there without falling out when I have to run somewhere. I'm going to do my pocket anchored into the side seam, because on that coat I haven't got a waist seam, so I'm deciding on the depth I want. You know, if in doubt, put your phone on top of the paper. And I start with a right angle. Again, decide how deep you want it. This is up to you. It can be as deep as you want to. And the only thing you have to consider, if you make it too deep and big, you know, things can get lost. And then again, draw up at a right angle. And this for now is just a guideline. We're going to add a few curves later on. And then again, I'm going to add my last guideline at the top. Like this. Then, of course, we don't want to squares, for example, here, because that's a weak point for putting in, like if you put a key in and you got a square point, it's more likely to poke through. So I'm going to actually curve it slightly using my pattern master, or you can sketch it out and then retrace it. And then again, I'm going to also curve it up to here, because that's just empty space. Of course, if you're anchoring it into your horizontal waist seam, then you just extend upwards straight, or you can actually extend upwards at a slight angle. I'm going to start my curve at the opening And I don't want to have too pointy an angle. I want lots of space. So I'm actually sort of starting with a 45-degree angle and then drawing a nice curve. And then sort of moving my pattern master around. And that's my pattern done. Of course, you will need to cut either 2 pairs in self, or it could be lining fabric, different fabric, contrast fabric. If you want to use a contrast fabric, what is a good idea is to actually add a little bit of a facing along here, and that can be either top stitched, or you can actually add a seam. So you could actually sort of have your pocket with a seam here, and then you can either curve it down or you can add a right angle. And that is just so if you have your pocket open, you only add that to one side. So when you look inside at the piece which attaches to your back, you can't see the contrast fabric. So you can add that if you want to, but you don't need to if you have a matching color. Then you add seam allowance everywhere, and here we have it, our finished pocket pattern. Now you need to cut it out in fabric, and then there's different ways of stitching it. I'm going to show you the one I use. You can see how much bigger my new pocket pattern is. Now down to order of construction. What you can do if you have a pocket like this is that you first of all attach the pocket to the garment at the opening, and after that you can actually stitch your whole side seam and pocket in one long seam, which is really efficient and neat. However, if you have it anchored into the side seam, or if you have it anchored into your waist seam, you have to use a slightly different construction. What I like to do is first of all stitch my pockets together, and you can use a French seam, you can bind it or overlap a zigzag it. Then once I've done it, then I stitch it to the opening on both sides. And because we have a continuous straight line here, and if you move up, of course, we've got a continuous straight line there as well. After you stitched it, you need to snip into your pocket where it opens. Maybe fuse it as well if you're using thin fabric, to use some interlining to stabilize a point. And of course, you can also stabilize the whole entry depending on your fabric. And then I iron all my side seam allowances to the back, and then I can catch them into my side seam, and that sort of automatically points the pocket in the right direction towards the front. And of course, if you go up all the way up to your waist, then again you would then stitch it into your waist at that point as well. And here you have it, exactly the pocket you need to make it usable, especially if, like me, you like to put a lot in your pockets. For stitching, you can use whatever method you normally use. I just showed you one of them, but of course you might have a method you prefer. For this coat, I'm going to use a slightly unusual one because I'm going to use quite a lot of hand stitching to mount it. But that is sort of extra work you don't really need for most of the pockets there are. I'd love to know what you think of this pocket method. Do let me know in the comments, and do enjoy making your own working side seam pockets.